for me.
All right, welcome everyone. This is our wrap-up session for the Lenten, Poetry of Lent and the Sabbath poetry of Wendell Berry. So today we're going to look at Easter poems, but I think we're going to expand what we're looking at just to think more in broad terms about Easter. So if you read ahead, then you'll see that they gave us 7 poems to look at for today. Does anyone remember why we got 7?
Nope.
Anyone guess why?
7 days of the week. I don't know.
Lorna is not on. She would answer the question.
So there's 7 weeks in the season of Easter. So the idea was you could even just do one of these little poems and read it once a week, you know, just to sort of keep the fun going if you wanted. So I found, I think there's, what we might do is look at a couple of these poems, but I found it interesting that for Easter, our poems got much, much shorter, right? Whereas Easter is such a transformative, like, change in perspective. To me, it's such a big thing, you know, that my brain went off into a different direction. So that's why we might sort of take off to an additional poem today. But I thought maybe we might as well just start with what we've got and just see how it goes. So I wanted us to skip the first poem that's in our poetry set and instead look
I looked up that guy.
Me too.
What guy? What guy?
Pulcro Pieros.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, then tell me about that guy.
He was an early Renaissance painter, but
Okay.
after he died, he was better known as a mathematician.
Born in
After he died, he
1415.
became known as a mathematician?
Well, he was a really good mathematician and an artist, and after he died, people seemed to recognize him better as a mathematician, but
Oh, I see. Okay.
he was an artist, an early Renaissance,
All right,
from
well,
the 1400s. So
And
I'm
no one
quite
for
happy
no one
to-
for and no one for making or doing the best resurrection painting ever.
Okay, well,
that's what it's
considering
known
all
for.
of this research has happened and we have experts here on this poem, we'll do the first poem then. All right. They're short, so it's okay. We'll get through a few of them. So this is called Why Seek Ye the Living Among the Dead? It's one sort of big stanza. So how about we'll get one person to read it through for the first time. And as usual, we're just look to see what catches your attention. You know, is there a word, is there an image that just sort of pops to mind as we're reading through this poem together? So does anyone volunteer to be the reader?
Sure.
Okay, go for it, Judy.
So much enthusiasm. Why seek ye the living among the dead? Early in the year of my friend's gift, I saw at San Sepolcro Piero's vision, the soldiers who guard the dead from the living themselves become as dead men, one tumbling dazedly backward. Awake, his wounds bleeding still, his foot among the tomb. Christ who bore our life to its most wretched end, having thrust off like a blanket the heavy lid stands. But for his face and countenance I have found no words, powerful beyond life and death, seen beyond sight or light, beyond all triumph serene. All this Piero saw, and we who were sleeping, seeking the dead among the dead, dared to be awake. We who see we are forever seen, by sight have been forever changed. The morning at last has come, the trees once bare are green.
Okay, so just take a moment to take that in. And when you're ready, just if there's share with us the parts that caught your attention.
Christ who bore our life to its most wretched end.
I have found no words.
So what's the feeling you get when you read through this poem then, Jeanette?
I don't know, I'm just thinking we've read all this and we've read and read and read, and there's words and words and words and words.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm the world's biggest talker. And, it's just words. But when we come to say, as you say, this Easter is so big and so massive and whatever, and you go through the season and the Lenten, and then you go through horrible and the Good Friday and whatever. But then really to be able to find the words in English, in our language, that sum it up, that say how we, as they say, how you really feel. What is the word? Now you can pick out all kinds of them, but to me, it's just there are no words. I can't find a word.
So
If
is
you
this
were to
poem
ask
missing
someone-
the mark for you then? Is it just kind of a dud poem?
Yeah, kind of.
That's totally fair. Here, since I didn't do my homework the way that you all did, so I didn't look up what this was all about. So I'm taking over your screen. So there's the painting that that he's talking about. So maybe if the words don't speak to you, does anything in this painting speak to you? This is the resurrection by that gentleman.
Jesus is pretty white.
Yeah.
His stance reminds me of authoritative position, which I never think of that with Jesus.
Mhm.
I want to know what the flag is that he's carrying. I wonder what that
Mhm.
represents.
Beginning of Red Cross.
Well, if those are the soldiers, they don't look too sharp, do they?
No,
Well, the poem, is it okay if I stop sharing the picture for a sec?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. The poem sounded kind of violent when I read it. This is kind of why I wanted to not go there. So, shoot, I thought it was, the soldiers who guard the dead from the living themselves become as dead men, as tumble dazedly backwards. Oh, the first time I read it, I kind of thought that Jesus had it was such a violent emergence from the tomb that it maybe knocked the soldiers out. Okay, so my imagination just took off with me there. So maybe they're just a little stunned because they weren't expecting a dead person to come out of that tomb. Okay, coming back to the poem, is there any pieces of it that resonate or offer us something?
We who see, we are forever seen, by sight have been forever changed.
yeah. That's the one thing that struck me as we're forever changed. Like out of the whole thing, that's the only thing that was speaking to me.
Powerful beyond life and death, seen beyond sight or light.
And mine's a simplistic, the morning at last has come. The trees once bare are green.
Okay, well,
If anybody's interested in more background on the painting.
let's hear it. Okay, go for it.
No. They said World War II, 1944, that town, and that's the town of San Sepolcro in Italy, was in danger of being bombed. But there was an American, I think, pilot who knew about this painting, and that's where the painting was. And he did not want to bomb the town because of that painting, that their town wasn't destroyed. And then
Wow.
he did go and see the painting afterwards.
Okay, well, welcome to Brenda Tutu. Glad you could join us today. So this is as much energy as I want to focus on this particular poem, just because I feel like there's not a depth to it. So is it okay if we move on to the second one?
Mhm.
Okay. Anyone volunteer to be the reader for our second poem? Again, it's short.
I can read it.
Thanks, Linda.
2009. After windstorm and ice storm, the woods floor is a maze of trunks and branches, heavy bodies brought violently down, and this is the fate they stood for. In April now, after the cold and the blows rising in the tangle so mightily shaken, broken and fallen, in their turn come the small flowers, rue, anemone, and bluebell, violet and larkspur. In these standing, also in time to fall, shines the world's great tenderness, light and sight passingly touching, like a kiss. Made no doubt by force, the world is saved by tenderness. After they fall, the fallen decay quietly by countless gentle acts. Possesses it, it disappears, it never did exist, and hate must seek another world that love has made.
All right, friends. So when you're ready, just share what piece of this connected with you.
The first part, because that's what it felt like my yard was like this.
I like the two lines with the word tenderness, shines the world's great tenderness, and world is saved by tenderness.
I underlined that as well. I've seen my own woods just totally destroyed by a bad hurricane, tornado, windstorm. And I used to walk through it and had a path through it, and then everything was just a tangle, as it said. I think the word tangle is there, and broken and fallen. So I can close my eyes and see that clearly. But to say that, and yeah, it was made no doubt by force. The world is saved by tenderness.
I would agree. That would be my thoughts as well.
That what draws me, the world saved by tenderness.
What do you think of the line? It's maybe the fifth line down. This is the fate they stood for. Is that the purpose of a tree?
I don't know, does it speak to the cyclical thing of nature, that things grow, die, decay, and other things come from that decay? I don't know. That would be my thought.
I think what struck me is even more than the idea of a cycle, right? Is that this poem to me seems to suggest that the greatest gift that these fallen trees have offered in their whole lives is falling and then nourishing others, right? That is the greatest gift, not when they were in blossom and when they had beautiful leaves and, you know, did all the things trees do. It was more in their giving to others that was the tree's greatest act. And I find that interesting.
The thing that we,
Jeanette, yeah.
now, as I say, the word's broken and fallen, because I think that we have all at times been broken and fallen and had to resurrect ourselves. I'm only speaking for me, but I've lived nearly 80 years, so I know that that is the cycle of life, that you become broken. And it's not just the nature cycle, but the cycles for us when you go through brokenness and you're taken down low, but then in turn you are lifted or saved or whatever needs to be.
Okay, here's a question. So this poem was written by a man, right? And I'm just thinking of gender roles and how women especially are taught from a young age to always be giving, right? Whether they're giving to their families, or it's like a woman is always nurturing, is always, you know, thinking of others and providing for others. Like that's something I feel probably most of us were instructed when we were younger, right? So do you feel like this is a glorification of serving others? Like in the sense, you know, that the tree has died, you know, the tree had to die in order to give this gift. Same thing with Jesus, right? But just stay with the tree for a second, right? Is this asking too much of the tree? Like to glorify this part of the act is sort of like the penultimate, like the best thing a tree can do is sort of is like die so it can give to others. Like, do you feel like that's sometimes a toxic message we give to women? Or like, what does your inner feminist say to this poem? Maybe that's my question for you.
Do you want me to move?
What was that, Judy?
Wasn't me.
Oh,
When you look at the line, the world is saved by tenderness.
Mhm.
And
No, it's nice.
that's us. Quite often it's the women who fix things, who have the knowledge, the compassion, the empathy to fix things. Whereas men, you know, in the past, it's always been, well, we take it by brute force. But women have always worked from the point of tenderness. So that I see the tree being the brute force, but that the women take it over and make something of it with the tenderness and the new growth.
Well, it continues after that line, after they fall, the fallen decay quietly, but by countless gentle acts.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's anything to do with male, female at all. I know several men, and one of them sitting fairly close to me now. And then, you don't have to leave there, big fella. He left. I think the men I know who are as tender than a lot of women I know. So I don't think it's anything to do with what sex one is at all.
Would it,
I don't.
would it be comparing, because the last line says, hate must seek another world that love has made. So is it looking at that aspect of hate versus love?
I don't have that line.
I don't
I
have
don't
that.
either.
Well, maybe is that on the wrong? You know what? I turned the page over and it's the other way. I like that line better than the rest.
I
of
don't.
it.
What's
Thinking,
she
where is she
reading?
getting
It was from another poem and I thought it continued on. Sorry about that. But I do like that better.
Okay.
it's not, I'm not wanting to, you know, I'm not wanting to solidify the gender roles that are already in place in our world. It's just, I guess I was trying to look at it through a female lens rather than through the author's eyes. It's, you know, like, it's true, just in a general sense, right? Like if someone who identifies as male is perceived as being tender and caring and comforting, we all just melt with that. We're like, oh, they're such a wonderful person, and aren't they being so attentive? It's so great. But you know, that quality of tenderness, I feel, is often overlooked in women. It's not seen as a sign of strength in women. Like, it's expected of all of us, right? But it's sort of taken for granted, and it's not held in the same kind of esteem, right, as it is when it's found in a place where perhaps we're not used to seeing it. This poem, there are parts I do like about it. Like the idea, like if this poem were to offer someone some solace when they're grieving, with the idea that, still in death, we are connected and we are being nourished by our relationships, or, by that which is past, right? I think that's a beautiful thing. I guess for me, I've always thought of, in some ways it's easy to die for someone. It's much harder to live for someone, right? To remain in the struggle and to keep doing and supporting and helping, right? Like to do the smaller things every day takes more patience and care than to do one big act, right? Which is often, glorified and, very shiny and impressive. Anyway, this poem just got my hackles up, and parts of it are lovely, but there's parts of it where I'm just like, "Arr." Yeah, it's like, have you ever read it's a children's book called The Giving Tree, where there's this lovely tree, and the tree, gives its sap, to people, and it gives its branches to the birds for their houses. Just the whole life of this tree is just giving, giving, giving. Well, someone's written sort of an updated version to it, and in jest. And the idea is, well, that tree got tired, and also needed to take care of herself, right? So, she wasn't going to just give until the last drop was gone. It's just, I feel like we have to challenge some of those stereotypes about what sacrifice means, as well as self-care. Like, we shouldn't completely lose ourselves in order to help others. Anyway, for some reason, this poem has triggered me, so apparently I need to sit with that and work on it a little bit. Are there any other totally different trains of thoughts from this poem that people want to share? Does this poem feel in line to you with the idea of resurrection? Yeah, I feel out of the 7, like this one definitely feels very Easterish, perhaps more so than some of the others. How about to compare? So this time I do want to jump ahead to the last poem in our Poetry Companion. So that is the one. Yeah, it's called number 7, 1982. And it's got 2 stanzas. So can I get 2 readers to share that one?
I'll read.
Okay, Brenda's 1. And who's 2? Cindy's 2.
One.
Brenda beat you to it, Jeanette. Okay, go for it, Brenda.
The clearing rests in song and shade. It is a creature made by old life held in soil and leaf, by human joy and grief. My human work, fidelity of sight and stroke, by rain, by water
We
on
join
the
our
parrot
work
stone.
to heaven's gift, our hope to what is left. That tree and woods at last agree in an economy of widest worth. Highest heaven's kingdom come on earth. Imagine paradise, O dust arise.
Okay, so just take a moment and see what's speaking to you in this poem.
I'm not sure what it means, but I'm just curious about the last sentence on the first stanza, by rain, by water on the parent stone.
I think the line that really includes us as humans is we join our work to heaven's gifts. That the work that we do is the work and and it is a gift, the work that we do for our families, for our friends, for our church, for our community, or whatever. And our work is a gift. And we join our work or our gift to heaven's gift.
All right, I'm going to do a check-in. So just pause whatever thought you have right now, because I'm having fun looking at all your facial expressions. So just when you're looking at this poem, what's the feeling you're getting? Because even if you don't have to pick an image or try to understand it, just what's going on inside you right now as you look at this poem?
I don't understand it.
I don't know what it's trying to tell me.
Totally fair.
Ditto.
That's totally fine. Yeah.
It's almost like we've been through it all and we're in the clearing with song, that we've made it. Would you quit laughing at me?
Linda Cowan, I asked you how you were feeling.
I'm feeling like we made it.
Oh my goodness. Uh-huh. That's not a feeling. Okay, these are all very fair observations. And this is, as I read through all of the 7 of the poems for Easter, I kind of felt a bit let down, because some of the Lenten poems really connected, with the ideas of decay and loss and change and all of this. Like, they were hard. We worked hard through those poems. And here we are at Easter. Easter's a big thing. There's lots of wonderful themes we can tackle. And then this is our poem, right? And I honestly chose, in my mind, the 2 best poems, right? And so if this one is also a dud, it's kind of like, oh, what a big letdown. So either, it might just be that we disagree with the people, because like there's so many poems in this book, right? So the poems they chose maybe just aren't working for us, or maybe Wendell Berry is much better in the midst of the struggle part, rather than sort of connecting with more of a triumphant or transformative energy, maybe. So this is why I gave us an extra poem to look at this week, the one by Mary Oliver. Just because when I started thinking about Easter and Easter poems, I would expect them to have sort of bigger themes, right, than just our Lenten ones. Our Lenten ones, you can stop and look at different aspects of Lent, whether it's letting go or going through depression, or all of those pieces of Lent that we struggle with, right? But Easter, we've got themes of transformation, of new life, of connecting with God, of seeing the world in a totally different way. And especially someone who's writing about nature, like that, in my mind, honestly, that should be like, this should be an easier thing to do, right? You just look outside your window and it's like, woohoo! Nature is reminding us that each day is such a gift, right? Okay, so if it's all right with y'all, we're going to thank Wendell Berry very much, for his lovely poems, but we are going to put them down and pick up our favorite, Mary Oliver, again, and just see what this poem offers, because honestly, this one connected to me much more on an Easter level. So you'll notice that this poem it's got numbers in it. So it's got like different movements. If it was a piece of music, each stanza would be a very different tune. Like they work together, but they are quite different. So I fear, like, if we read the whole thing through, I feel like we're gonna forget parts. Like, you'll forget the beginning part by the time you get to the end. However, I love the idea of this poem. So how about let's do the whole thing and just let it take us on a journey, and then we can sort of talk about big impressions at the end. So don't worry about the individual pieces, just take it in, just allow this poem to wash over you. Does that work?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll just randomly pick people to share, and so you'll just read whatever's in that whole number section. Okay, does that work? Okay, so Linda Cowan, can you do number 1?
Something came up out of the dark. It wasn't anything I had ever seen before. It wasn't an animal or a flower, unless it was both. Something came up out of the water, a head the size of a cat, but muddy and without ears. I don't know what God is. I don't know what death is, but I believe they have between them some fervent and necessary arrangement.
Jeanette.
Sometime melancholy leaves me breathless.
Brenda Tutu.
I don't seem to have that one.
Okay. Can you look in the chat box? It's been pasted there.
Oh, this chat box.
Yeah.
Okay, how come I don't see it? I don't see it.
Do you see anything in the chat box?
No.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry,
So,
Brenda. So I did
that's
send you,
okay.
I did send it to you by email. For right now, is it okay for you just to listen then as the poems?
Oh,
Share the poems?
definitely.
Okay. All right. Linda Bachman, number 3, please.
Water from the heavens, electricity from
Wait. Where are you?
Isn't
Number
that
3.
She's 3.
That's not 3.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
What?
It is.
It's not the 3 in my book. Hold on. Oh, it is. Well, what the heck? Okay, read it anyway. I'll just go with you.
I've got it too. Whenever I'm reading
Okay.
now. So carry on.
I'll start again. Water from the heavens, electricity from the source, both of them mad to create something. The lightning brighter than any flower, the thunder without a drowsy bone in its body.
All right, Brenda Emer Ascaville, number 4.
Instructions for living a life. Pay attention. Be astonished. Tell about it.
Judy.
Each time it seemed to solve everything. Each time it solved a great many things, but not everything. Yet left me as grateful as if it had indeed and thoroughly solved everything.
Brenda the Great.
God, rest in my heart and fortify me. Take away my hunger for answers that the hours play upon my body. Lift the hands of my beloved. Let the calf head appear again, the smallest of your mysteries, some wild cousin of my own blood probably, some cousin of my own wild blood probably, in the black dinner bowl of the pond.
Cindy.
I don't have that. I don't have the last. Oh, just a second.
It's number 7. No?
No.
No,
Do all
it's
of you
cut
not
off.
have number 7?
I have.
This is what happens when you cut and paste from the internet. Okay, here's number 7.
I have number 7 too.
All right, go
ahead.
for it.
Death waits for me. I know it. Oh, my phone is ringing.
Joy, I've got it.
Go for it.
Death waits for me. I know it. Around one corner or another. This doesn't amuse me. Neither does it frighten me. After the rain, I went back into the field of sunflowers. It was cool, and I was anything but drowsy. I walked slowly and listened to the crazy roots in the drenched earth, laughing and growing.
Okay. So our journey through that poem was quite interesting.
So then planned.
Yeah, and I figured out what happened with your part, Linda. There's in part number 3 has more than what is here. So I don't know, like the one I shared with you, I grabbed off the internet. So I'm sorry that it's missing that. Can we try this one more time? Because like this poem, this is like This is the climax. This is the last poem we're doing as a group. I want us to go out with a bang. I want it to connect with you deeply. So is it okay? Can I just read you the whole thing? And this time just look for that piece that's just jumping out at you, okay? All right, number 1, here we go. Something came up out of the dark. It wasn't anything I had ever seen before. It wasn't an animal or a flower. Oh, unless it was both. Something came up out of the water, a head the size of a cat, but it was muddy without ears. I don't know what God is. I don't know what death is, but I believe they have between them some fervent and necessary arrangement. Sometimes melancholy leaves me breathless. Later, I was in a field full of sunflowers. I was feeling the heat of midsummer, and I was thinking about the sweet electric drowse of creation when it began to break. In the west, clouds gathered, thunderheads, and in an hour, the sky was filled with them. In an hour, the sky was filled with the sweetness of rain and the blast of lightning, followed by the deep bells of thunder. Water from the heavens, electricity from the source, both of them mad to create something. The lightning brighter than eddy flower, the thunder without a drowsy bone in its body. Instructions for living a life. Pay attention. Be astonished. Tell about it. 2 or 3 times in my life, I discovered love. Each time it seemed to solve everything. Each time it solved a great many things, but not everything. Yet left me as grateful as if it had indeed and thoroughly solved everything. God, rest in my heart and fortify me. Take away my hunger for answers and let the hours play upon my body like the hands of my beloved. Let the cathead appear again, the smallest of your mysteries. Some wild cousin of my own blood, probably. Some cousin of my own wild blood, probably, in the black dinner bowl of the pond. Death waits for me, I know it, around one corner or another. This doesn't amuse me, nor does it frighten me. After the rain, I went back into the field of sunflowers. It was cool and I was anything but drowsy. I walked slowly and listened to the crazy roots in the drenched earth, laughing and growing. Okay, so first impressions, what word or image grabbed you?
Number 4, instructions for living a life. Pay attention, be astonished, tell about it.
Yeah, that's the one that grabbed me too.
Definitely.
Yeah. One that grabbed me too.
Yeah.
I mean, she typically ends her poems in an uplifting manner, and just, you know, in the crazy roots in the drenched earth, laughing and growing. You just have a sense of peace and things are okay, like we're going to be fine.
I'm sorry, Joy. I'm gonna say goodbye. Okay, I have to go.
Okay, take
Bye,
care.
Brenda.
Hi, Brenda.
Bye.
I'm not sure I understand the first stanza, but I'm intrigued by that. But I believe they have between them some fervent and necessary arrangement. But I'm not sure I understand the other part so well, what it means.
A theme, something I often feel when I read Mary Oliver poetry is that she is just observing and being aware of the nature around her, right? And not necessarily trying to analyze it or, you know, put a label on it. Like all of her poems are about, like, you know, meeting a bird or a plant that just delights her and just sort of fills her senses, right? So here, like if you imagine an animal that's in the water that maybe looks like a cat, but it doesn't have ears, and it's swimming around. Could be a beaver, right? Could be a muskrat, like who knows? And does it matter if we know, right?
I suppose that was the part I couldn't figure out, what the purpose, like, was
Why
there
is it
need?
there? Yeah. I feel like this poem takes us on a journey, right? Like it's, it starts off in this unknown place. It's just having this weird creature pop up, and just be present, but then it goes into a storm that's just so wild and charged and just changes, the whole environment around her. And then when she comes back from it, sees it with different eyes, right? That, still by the end of the poem, she still calls it a cat head, still not knowing what it is, but somehow it's become part of her story. It's become part of the scene. Like it's just, and it's an accepted part, right? So I don't know. I like the fact that we don't fully know what it is, that she leaves the room for mystery and she finds belonging in the mystery as well. I think that that's very cool.
But I think that it's left a mystery because of the lines, I don't know what God is, I don't know what death is.
Yeah. And I think this poem was written when she was not super young, but like younger. This was sort of an earlier poem in her career. So it's not like she was facing down her own death and trying to grapple with, what is death and what's going to happen. It's more like maybe this, especially since it was a dark creature, right? Like something came out of the water, something came up out of the dark. So perhaps in her imagination, it could be otherworldly. It could be, something from beyond death, right? Like maybe that's what got her thinking about those lines of, I don't know what God is, right? Or I don't even know what death is. Like, I feel like I'm sort of in this sort of limbo in between space, meeting mythical creatures. I feel like this poem is, the reason why I chose this poem is because it's a big picture poem, right? I feel like, we could sort of analyze every piece of it, and maybe there's some merit in that. But the fact that there are like movements to this poem, separate sections that sort of just travel and don't necessarily feel like they connect, but somehow they do, to me, this feels more like an Easter poem where it's like, it just embraces the whole thing, right? Like if you think the mystery of the resurrection, and not understanding what you're seeing, and having an experience like the storm that is just so overwhelming that it changes you and charges you, and just it's bigger than our words. Like I feel like this poem is best taken as a whole, right, rather than just trying to make it too small. Yeah, so it's cool to like look at it and pull different parts, like the pay attention, be astonished, and tell about it. But to see it as within the whole is an important thing. And I'm sorry, this is sort of me preaching, but in some ways, this feels like what we need to do as Christians as well, right? Like when we look at our lives, when we look at our faith even, is to keep the big picture in mind, right? To keep the resurrection in mind, to keep in mind that God is constantly renewing and changing and transforming, right? Because that kind of lens helps us to see all these pieces and somehow put them together and have them make sense as a whole. Okay, so that's me. I'm just gonna zip it. Does anyone else want to like share pieces of this poem that are just calling to you or giving you questions or all sorts of good things?
What about the title? Sometimes.
What about it? What do you think?
I'm asking. We've read it over, but okay, why did she call it sometimes? And she doesn't say sometime. She said sometimes. And when we say sometimes, we say sometimes, I, So I just, the title is what kind of floored me more than anything. Okay, sometimes what? This is me. Okay, here's some of my random thoughts, because it is a bit disjointed. It gets, you have the mythical creature, then she talks about her melancholy, then she gets into the energetic stuff, and then all of a sudden, it's all of that stuff is gone, and it's, look, here's how to live a good life. 1, 2, 3. Then she gets talking about love. Then she gives a prayer, God rest in my heart. And then she's back to the death again. And kind of, I don't know, I don't see a lot of connection to it. It seems to be bits and pieces.
So perhaps is your answer there, right? Because this poem does feel like it was written at separate times, like whether it was all through one night in one storm, beginning, middle, and end, or whether this poem sort of came together over time. So each time that she wrote it, was that just another time that she added into this big poem?
Okay, yeah, I think that's what happened. Okay, you write a little bit, the next day you write a little more. Okay, I can live with that.
I got the feeling that sometimes she thinks about these things and then she moves on, and then something will happen and she goes back and she thinks about them again, and then she moves on. So it's not a constant, oh, all these things are in my mind, but something will happen and I'll think about it. But I won't stay there. I'll move on and look for something else. And that's why I get the feeling she calls it sometimes, because sometimes I think about it this way, but not all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other
Again,
impressions or things?
it flowed for me okay. Like I could, maybe the way she broke it up and said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we think, okay, that's this, they're just separate thoughts. And, if she just would have ran it through, I wonder if we would have looked at it the same way. And then she starts out with the question of what is this? And then she goes into, the lightning, and then afterwards, the love, and then she goes back after the rain. And you can imagine, we all know what it feels like after the rain, and you go out and there's the rainbow, and it's just you smell the earth, and it's just peaceful and wonderful. It was cool, and I was anything but drowsy. I walked slowly and listened, like she's come to terms with things, like. I mean, she obviously did that for a reason, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but yeah, it's kind of a different way to present her poems.
Any other impressions from this poem? Okay, well, thank you very much for all of your thoughts and everything that you shared. This is our wrap up for our Lenten Sabbath poetry by Wendell. So thanks to everyone who's here today and who took part in other weeks. That it's been a wonderful journey just to share this time with all of you.